saw the look of recognition when they know just who you are. Seen you on the TV, I seen you on that show. You make the people crazy, and then you let them go. Before the show we calm them, we sympathize, we care. And the hostile folk we keep apart. Till the red light says on air, did you catch those child molesters? No one else goes there. It's only up for my success. The greater thing, the danger. The more you know, the show will score. Showtime, the best TV you've ever seen, where people say the things that they really mean. I hear my name, I hear them roar. For the one more time, I take the floor. Just one more Barry Williams show. We're gonna take you where you want to go. Showtime.
Evidence that our universe might exist inside a black hole? What's up with that?
Listen, Neil, a black hole in fake space is only theoretical. So there is absolutely no evidence that our universe exists inside of a black hole. However, there might be some evidence out there somewhere that Brian Cox has been inside of your black hole.
All right, guys, so here is my honest review on the new Summer of Love sequel that everyone's been talking about. I watched this movie last weekend with my family, and although it's been rated PG for its mostly peaceful content, there are definitely a few scary parts, so I don't recommend watching with young children. In the first film, writers focus on main character Shaniqua, who is seeking reparations with the tagline, "Where is my Hector and my mule?" And in this one, they focus on a deported Mexican drug lord with the tagline, "Where is Hector and his mule?" Kind of a funny play on words. I thought that was pretty original. Okay, so let's get into the movie. It starts with evil villain Donald Trump again. So similar to the first movie, except in this one, his evil plan is to deport everyone in the USA who is Mexican. And he does this by deploying ICE to target every house with a car parked on the front lawn. And everyone gets really mad about it, so then they start posting angry videos to TikTok. Everyone starts protesting, and at first the protests are pretty peaceful. It's mostly like just a bunch of chubby incels and lesbians who are mad because the owner of their favorite churro stand got deported. Half of them are wearing masks, which I thought was a nice callback to the first Summer of Love when COVID was a thing. But then you find out that they're all just hiding from workman's comp. But then one of the Mexicans sets a car on fire and things start getting pretty crazy in the movie, guys. This is when, things like really start to climax. So to keep the budget low on this movie, the Fast and the Furious actually donated 3 of their cars for this scene, which I thought was pretty cool because they were delivered by Michelle Rodriguez herself, right before she got deported. Oh, here's a Mexican stepping perfectly into frame to wave his Mexican flag. So then all the protesters are like, hey, we should burn more stuff. So the producer started handing out gas masks and stuff just to make sure all the actors were safe during the riot scene. I thought this killed the authenticity a little bit and it felt less realistic, but safety first always. Then we reach the climax of the movie where Donald Trump, the villain, deploys the National Guard to quell the riots. And then the movie ends sort of with a pretty shocking twist where Trump changes his mind and decides he's not actually going to deport anyone at all because he is just a giant puppet controlled by an even bigger puppet who is controlled by Satan. I found the storyline here to be a little bit convoluted. It kind of reminded me of the ending of Lost a little bit, which I know a lot of people hated, but I actually liked it because I'm different and unique. So anyways, I don't want to spoil the entire movie by telling you everything about it, so I'm just gonna quickly go over my ratings for all the elements of the movie. I give the plot a 3 out of 10. The movie felt very similar to the first Summer of Love. I feel like they're kind of running out of ideas and reusing the same stuff. I do know that the film was funded by American taxpayers, so maybe the lack of budget was from the Doge cuts or something. I don't know. I don't really like to get too involved in politics. Originality, I gave it a 1 out of 10. This was actually the lowest score for all the criteria. One of my favorite scenes was when the Democrats were crying on the internet over a little Mexican girl being separated from her mother. Yeah, this was a pretty big tearjerker moment for me in the movie, but then I realized after that they actually had stolen the scene from a Peruvian show. Do people know that when you leave a country, you can take your kids with you? I really found this to be kind of distasteful, especially since they're not giving the little Peruvian girl the credit she deserves. But, you know, like, what else could you expect from white supremacy? So for the full overall emotional impact, I give the movie a 7 out of 10. This is the highest rating I'm giving. The movie was for emotional impact. I did find myself feeling pretty bad for all the retarded people who think this is real life. It must be pretty hard to not be able to tie your shoelaces in the morning, but that's why Velcro exists, and that made me feel a little less bad. Okay, guys, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. What did you guys think? Were you entertained by it? What was your favorite scene from the movie? Honestly, I just hope that I get deported next because this continent is getting pretty fake and gay.
I find that really, really bizarre. I've talked about how the playbook never changes in the past, and it doesn't. And it doesn't matter what subject it is. These aren't creative people. They play the same thing over and over. It doesn't matter what the subject is. This is back in 1990 when they were trying to get us into the first Iraq war, okay? And this liar right here is going to tell you all about how babies were thrown out of incubators, and she witnessed this. They always use kids and babies in hospitals. You know, this should show these neocon fake American firsters what is really going on, because it's the same thing every time.
It's the second week after an invasion. I volunteered at the Al-Adan hospital with 12 other women who wanted to help as well.
And notice how she speaks English perfectly, right? Something's up with that. She's from the Middle East, and they just bring her in on a whim, and she speaks perfect English. Bizarre.
I was the youngest volunteer. The other women were from 20 to 30 years old. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
That's how they got us into this war, with this story from this girl, 15 years old, allegedly.
was horrifying. I could not help but think of my nephew, who, if born premature, might have died that day as well. I saw him talk to a friend of mine after his torture and released by the Iraqis. He is 22, but he looked as though he could have been an old man. The Iraqis dunked his head into a swimming pool until he almost drowned. They pulled out his fingernails and applied electric shock to sensitive parts
Come on, dude. Come
his
on.
body. He was lucky to survive. If an Iraqi soldier is found dead in a neighborhood,
It was proven that this is all bullshit. All of it. Every bit of it.
they burned to the ground all the houses in the general vicinity and would not let firefighters come until the only ash and rubble was left. The Iraqis were making fun of President Bush and verbally and physically
They were
abusing
making fun of President Bush. Every time. 5, 10 years, 15 years after every one of these operations, they find out that it was all bullshit. Everybody finds out, but no one cares. And a lot of people, neocons and fake America Firsters out there, don't care at that point and actually believe that it still happened when you talk to them. Oh yeah, they were throwing babies out of incubators. No, they weren't.
We only did so because life in Kuwait became unbearable. I'm glad I'm 15, old enough to remember Kuwait before Saddam Hussein destroyed it, and young
My
enough
God.
to remember it. Thank you.
That got us into this war. Well, here's what happened later.
The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's investigative flagship program, The Fifth Estate, reveals the girl to be the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter, given her lines and coached in acting by the giant American PR firm Hill and Knowlton. It's one phase in a $10 million joint U.S.-Kuwaiti campaign of deception. This man is lying.
I myself buried 14 newborn babies that had been taken from their incubators.
This man is lying.
And they had kids in incubators, and they were thrown out of the incubators so that Kuwait could be systematically dismantled.
I've talked to many, many people who still believe, like older people mainly, that still believe that, Iraq the second time had weapons of mass destruction or had something to do with 9/11, which they totally didn't. And they totally believe it, wholeheartedly believe that the propaganda that has been shown to be fake is still true.
There were a lot of people who participated in a conspiracy. Yes, an out-and-out conspiracy of fake organizations, false documents, fraud, and disinformation.
Now let's get into the second time that we went into Iraq with George Bush, the second George Bush.
Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever.
No question whatsoever.
Lied. They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none.
And fucking Trump knew, and he's doing the same thing again. Come on,
There
man.
were no weapons of mass destruction.
All right.
No question whatsoever.
Look, bottom line, there were no weapons of mass destruction. They said there are weapons of mass destruction. Going into Iraq may have been the worst decision anybody has made, any president has made in the history of this country. That's how bad it is, okay?
We should have never been in Iraq.
I guarantee you, no question whatsoever.
And every time Netanyahu is there saying there is no question about it. Every single time. And here is Bush joking about not being able to find them after the fact.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere. Nope, no weapons over there. Maybe under here.
Here's the new one. The new weapons of mass destruction, new babies being thrown out of incubators tactic. It's bullshit.
Exclusive satellite images revealing the location of a previously unknown Iranian nuclear site. Now, the facility spans nearly 2,500 acres, and this is a big discovery. Jillian Turner has more from the State Department. Good morning, Jillian.
Pretty explosive, Dana. These satellite images that we have obtained exclusively show the alleged site location and even the layout.
It's the same thing every time. This is what they did with Saddam's weapons of mass destruction. Exactly. They were showing us, like satellite photos of the trucks or whatever that were carrying them. You know, all that
of
bullshit.
these secret, previously unknown nuclear weapons facilities inside Iran. This, of course, raises fresh concerns about the regime's role in these ongoing nuclear talks with the Trump administration.
And you have people like Netanyahu and Israel's other, mouthpieces who have been saying that Iran is 2 weeks away from having a nuclear weapon for like 25 or 30 years, man. Stop believing this shit.
Anyway, just like how Israel attacked Iran, initially firing the first shots, then declaring a state of emergency and telling evangelical Christians to pray for them, the U.S. dropped these bombs on Iran without first being attacked by Iran. Then told Iran to make peace, warning that further attacks could target remaining sites if Iran retaliated. Iran said that they moved the uranium from those facilities weeks before the attack, so it doesn't matter that they're now a parking lot because nothing was there anyway. Who even knows what's true and what isn't at this point, or if this whole thing is a wag the dog sort of show? Iran said that the strikes were in violation of international law and the UN Charter, and that, quote, Iran reserves all options for a response, end quote. And now, like clockwork, every Fox News normie just got the script download on the sleeper cells here in the United States. We've got all this fear being brewed up about going to concerts and sporting events, and I even saw someone say, don't go to the grocery store, order your groceries online. Honestly, I don't care. It's none of my business what you do in your country, especially if you're not attacking me. No Iranian ever has tried to MK-Ultra an entire schoolyard with LGBTQ XYZ sex change propaganda. They've never tried to legislate compulsory vaccination programs, or they've never printed money at an unprecedented rate so that it's hard for everyday people to buy groceries. Iranian women can vote, they can go to college, earn an income for their household, hold public office, drive. Doesn't Saudi Arabia have not so nice laws for women too? Yet they're our ally. Pakistan, last time I checked, wasn't a great place for women. Yet they have a nuclear program that's A-OK with everybody. You can't be the world's police when the United States of America has a dollar that is worth less and less every week. We can't control the barrage of illegals flooding into the country. The majority of our politicians are corrupt. Our infrastructure isn't being prioritized. It's crumbling. American education standards are so low that they're in hell. And our food and water is poisoned, but somehow bombing Iran is priority here. The biggest reality breakdown is somehow there's always enough money for endless war. The fact is, the United States has been engaged in military operations in the Middle East for over 4 decades. What has it gotten us? How long will Americans fall for the terrorist boogeyman storyline?
If you take away the Soviet Union and its chief proxy, the PLO, international terrorism would collapse.
If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. Obviously, we'd like to see a regime change, at least I would, in Iran, just as I would like to see in Iraq. The question now is a practical question. What is the best place to proceed? It's not a question of whether Iraq's regime should be taken out, but when should it be taken out? It's not a question of whether you'd like to see a regime change in Iran, but how do it...
Are there any other nations that you would recommend that the United States launch preemptive attacks upon at this point?
The answer is categorically yes. The two nations that are vying, competing with each other, who will be the first to achieve nuclear weapons, is Iraq and Iran. But a third nation, by the way, is Libya as well. Libya is trying very rapidly to build an atomic bomb capability. So you have here now 3 nations.
All stand together to stop Iran's march of conquest, subjugation, and terror.
I'm just stating the obvious. It's going to get worse. It's going to escalate. The Israelis are calling for Iranian regime change, which deflects from ousting Netanyahu. The American Pope is even urging de-escalation. Some of the U.S. lawmakers are questioning the legality of the strikes, especially without congressional support. Thomas Massie, in particular, has been very outspoken against U.S. involvement. And I gotta say, his outspokenness doesn't seem to just be tied to partisan blather.
And the notion that this isn't an act of war, I find ludicrous. This is a hot war. There are 2 nations, Israel and Iran, trading volleys of missiles every night, every day, and we're co-belligerent now in this war. 3 bombings to neutralize Iran may turn out to be the 2025 version of 2 weeks to slow the spread. You know, the base of the MAGA party that got Trump elected, most of us were tired of the wars in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, and we were promised that we wouldn't be engaging in another one.
What do you think, internet friends? How many times will Americans fall for this deception?
Basic timekeeping piece that we have. It goes around the Earth in 24 hours. It's the past that we know of. And so we know what the sun does.
The apparent motion of the sun is not uniform. For this reason, it would be difficult to construct a clock capable of keeping this irregular time. Therefore, a mean or imaginary sun is used.
I'm going to say that the globe has the better evidence at this time.
Number 3. All flat earthers say the same two things about water. The first is, water doesn't curve. And the second is, water finds its own level. The second phrase is completely meaningless, so the fact that you all say that exact thing verbatim is just one of the many demonstrations that you all blindly repeat what you hear without giving it a moment's thought. As for the first phrase, stating that water doesn't curve is at least a coherent thought. However, it is dead wrong. Put a drop of water on a piece of wax paper or a leaf. What does it look like? A freaking sphere. Isn't that something? In your haste to mindlessly parrot what you heard from flat earth priests about water, you forgot to look at water. Water curves, my friends. Look at this curved meniscus. Look at these waves. Water curves all the time.
The argument by the flat earthers is large bodies of water at rest do not curve, Professor Dunce. The natural physics of water is to find its level. Since you can't prove that large bodies of water curve around and adhere to a globe while it's spinning, wobbling, tilting, orbiting, and hurtling constantly, you choose to use these straw man arguments of a drop of water, a meniscus in a glass, and waves in the ocean. None of these prove the oceans curve around a globe. Maybe you need to get some new script writers, Dave, because they sure made you look stupid on this one. For those of you that didn't know, Professor Dunce is definitely not a professor, and his videos are scripted by other people, just like Simon Dan's videos are. This fake professor is nothing but another globe shill. If you don't believe me, watch for yourself.
Know what the channel was going to become. I didn't know it was going to become the centerpiece of my life, and that it'd become successful and everything, and that I'd go on to explain dozens of other topics, including topics I know nothing about, but I hire experts in the field to write me the scripts, and then consultants to look at the scripts and look at the finished animations and make sure it's all good, right? I'm not professing to be an expert, honestly, in any academic field, not even chemistry. But I understand it very well, and then the stuff that I don't understand, I have people who do understand it explaining it to me.
The natural physics of water are that once contained and undisturbed, the surface will always remain horizontal. This fundamental physical property of water is why it has been used as a leveling tool by builders and engineers for millennia. Whether in a bucket, bathtub, pond, lake, or an ocean, the surface of water at rest always remains flat and doesn't have the ability to show convexity or any shape whatsoever upon its surface. This fact is easily demonstrable and empirically verifiable, but completely at odds with what we are told about the globe. For Earth to be globular and over 70% covered in water, the oceans must be somehow curving around and sticking to all sides of a rapidly spinning ball suspended in space. It is simply impossible to make water behave this way. As anyone can experiment for themselves, bodies of water will not stick to the underside of a ball and cannot show convexity or any other shape upon their surface. Globe defenders will often point to water droplets, meniscus, surface tension, or adhesion, claiming these are examples of water bending or sticking to a surface, which is nothing but a fallacy of false equivalency, as these only happen at a very small scale, the size of a coffee cup. The claim is entire oceans wrapping around and sticking to the underside of a spinning ball, not a water droplet or the meniscus in a glass filled to the brim. NASA has also recently taken to faking CGI water balls using augmented virtual reality technology in an attempt to convince the public that water can behave this way. This kind of demonstration, done in a reference frame inaccessible to 99.99% of the population, however, is unrepeatable by the world's scientists and skeptics, and is therefore not scientific or permissible as proof of anything. First, they claim only massive objects the size of Earth have this attractive property. Then, as evidence, they show a phenomenon allegedly outside of our earthly reference frame. In other words, they are claiming bodies of water can bend around, stick to a ball, and show curvature upon their surface, but only at a scale too big for the public to recreate.
How do I recommend reasoning with a conspiracy theorist? I'm right now, the last couple months, I've been messing around with this idea of cognitive dissonance. This is to say, you have a worldview. You're presented with evidence that conflicts with the worldview. So you either have to change your worldview, which is hard, because you've lived your whole life with it.
This is Earth as we've been taught to think of it right from childhood. Right.
Or you just dismiss the evidence.
The Earth isn't flat.
Is the Earth flat or round? It's round.
It is not difficult to know that the Earth is round. One of the things you can see yourself with a pair of binoculars is if you actually go out to a lake and there are boats on that lake, the farther away a boat is, the more the bottom of the boat will disappear, and you'll basically just see the mast of the boat. And as a boat goes farther and farther away, the last thing you will see is the very top of the mast of that boat. And that's because the boat is actually going over the horizon that's curved.
They made sure to photograph him standing there with a really wide-angle lens, which curves horizontal lines.
Refraction is the angular bending of light. You can look it up.
In fact, it makes it look like there's a slope here. So you can see the edge going up there, but there's actually not a slope there. It's actually just flat.
That stuff is flat!
And that means that as it goes farther and farther away, you see less and less of the bottom of it and more of the top of that. You can see that with binoculars, by an ocean, by a lake. It's really easy. That wouldn't happen if the Earth were flat. You would simply see the boat getting smaller and smaller and smaller as it went farther away, but you'd be able to see the whole thing with the same proportions.
I mean, and there was nothing I could do other than go higher to get rid of that hump of water and see the rest of the ship.
So you dismiss the evidence so that you don't have this discomfort, this conflict in your mind, this dissonance.
You need to learn the history of NASA, of the Apollo programs, which were occult and satanic.
And by the way, this is called gravity.
That's what I'm working with right now. And apparently the way to overcome that is to say, we're all in this together.
We're all in this together. Space has always been exceedingly fake and gay.
Present the conspiracy theorist with the idea that he or she may be rejecting evidence because it's just so uncomfortable.
Well, the retired general said the US and Israel have kept it from the public because, quotes, humanity isn't ready until humanity can evolve, he says, and understand what space really is.
Now, one thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth.
I thought flat earthers were maybe faking their tests, so I bought this camera so I could see it for myself. Flat earthers aren't faking anything. Unlike the globe model propagandists, you don't have to trust us. Flat Earth isn't word of mouth anymore. I can show you the actual video proof again and again and again.
If Earth is really a globe with a radius of 3,959 miles, as we've been taught,
then there must exist an easily calculable spherical curvature upon the surface. When the math is completed, we see that there is an exponential, measurable, and what should certainly be observable amount of curvature present on a globe of given proportions. After just 1 mile, there should already be 8 inches. After 2 miles, 32 inches. And after 3 miles, there should be 72 inches, or 6 entire feet of physical curvature between point A and point B. Let's see if this supposed curvature is anywhere to be found.
Do you think that the curvature of the Earth is supposed to be like this or something? Do you have no idea how big the Earth is? Do you not understand that the curvature is not detectable at the surface of the Earth? It's really big. It's a really big planet.
You just heard Professor Dunt say the Earth is really, really big. Simon Dan has even referred to the Earth as a giant Earth. I'm so tired of hearing these globe shills use the excuse of how big the Earth is when they're confronted with the question, can you prove there is curvature of the Earth? And of course, they have no proof. They use the really big or giant Earth to claim that's why no one can see or measure curvature. We have plenty of proof there's no curvature. You've been looking at 100% proof there's no curvature in this picture of Felix Baumgartner looking out a portal window right before the Red Bull jump. Felix sees a flat horizon at 128,000 feet, which is 24.2 miles above the surface of the Earth. Neil deGrasse Tyson even said that stuff is flat in a live show talking about the Red Bull jump. So for shits and giggles, let's just see how many of these giant Earths that we could fit inside of the bullshit sun that NASA tries to push on all of us.
Hey, curious kids. Kevin J. DeBrune here. I am a former NASA rocket scientist, and today I am going to answer my most asked question. How many Earths could fit inside of the sun? And to do that, we're going to use math. Math. But first, we need to know how big each is. How large are the sun and the Earth on the inside? This is called volume, and we measure it in cubic kilometers. The volume of the sun is 1.4 times 10 to the 18th kilometers cubed. Kevin, what exactly does that mean? Well, that would be 1.4 million trillion kilometers cubed. That's a lot. So now the Earth is a little bit smaller, right? The Earth's volume is 1.08 times 10 to the 12th kilometers cubed, or 1.08 trillion kilometers cubed. To get the answer we're looking for, we need to find our Sun-Earth ratio. We will take the volume of the sun divided by the volume of the Earth, and the answer is 1.3 million. 1.3 million Earths could fit inside of the sun.
So there, the weird creepy guy just told you. It would take only 1.3 million of the so-called gigantic, humongous, colossal Earths to fit inside of NASA's fake sun. Listen up, globe shills. Stop being dickheads and trying to use this giant Earth bullshit as a reason why no one ever sees the Earth's curvature. The reason we don't see curvature is because there isn't any, and you liars have no proof of it and never will.
Wonderful, magical, celestial light, fantastical, mystical, wonderful sight. Belgian Swiss physicist Auguste Piccard, 1931, first to reach for the stars, was the first to explore the air view stratosphereus, a scientist curious to see what was there. An aluminium black ball on a helium balloon, hydrogen with photos and instruments. experiment sailed towards the moon, rose in just half an hour, 52,000 feet, 10 miles up, 10 temperature, left for dead drops in heat and cold, but disproving gravity. Wonderful, mystical, beautiful sight, flat line separation of black from blue light, a world run by deceivers, false make-believers, hiding in shadows, stealing our light. Mystical, fluorescent light, wonderful, magical, awesome, yes, stealing our light. Wonderful, let there be light, supernatural, eternal, supernatural. Up we go, higher than rainbows, higher than mountains, above cumulonimbus, higher than air, high level horizon, 360 around us, but right round behind us, any height that you dare. The sun and the moon both revolve above around us, but forever short time pass intelligently there. You'll never beat us, you'll never defeat us, no more you deceive us, we see through you like air. Kipper and Picard were the first ever known to reach up there. Divine luminescent light, mystical, wonderful, celestial light. So what was their eternal testimony? What did they report back to humanity? Said it seemed like a flat disk far as eyes can see, with an upturned edge fading into infinity. A mystical, ethereal, celestial sight, a divine creation, a clockwork of light, designed hid by deceivers and false make-believers, still cowering in shadows, still fearing our light. Here we go, higher than Everest, higher than airplanes, above zero cumulus, higher than air, a level horizon, 360 around us, no motion beneath us, no spinning, no bells on the firmament, turn along around us, to forever short time past geometrically there. You'll never beat us, you'll never defeat us, forever beneath us, we see through you like air. Mystics of illuminant light, fantastical, magical, we see through you like air. Magical angels of light, beautiful, wonderful, celestial light. The first to see truth when they reach for the stars, explorers and physicists, Kipper and Picard. Never you'll defeat us, forever beneath us, we see through you like air.